Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much for the opportunity to share some thoughts with you. I am not going to be taking an academic approach. In fact, I'm going to be taking quite a practical approach. And it's my intent to share with you the approach that the South African banking industry has taken to collaborating in order to promote cyber resilience within our industry. So to get there, I would like to cover a couple of things. Firstly, because I am representing the sector and SABRIC per se, I'd like to just spend about 2 or 3 minutes to tell those of you who are not familiar with SABRIC what that's all about. And then I want to talk you through, very briefly, the journey that the banking industry has been on, where we started and where we are today when it comes to collaboration. Highlight some of the current initiatives that you might find interesting, and hopefully some of the other sector representatives in the room can consider similar opportunities. Explain to you that collaboration is not as easy as it sounds and what are the factors impacting on it, and then of course just cover some top of mind issues before I tell you what our next chapter is going to be all about. So when I talk about SABRIC, SABRIC stands for the South African Banking Risk Information Center. There are basically 3 pillars on which the model rests. And the one is interbank collaboration. And most certainly, all of the banks, all of our members, really are committed to combating crime and to doing whatever they can within their own environments to fight the good fight. But SABRIC is the home of interbank collaboration. So as soon as something becomes an industry issue and we need to collaborate as an industry, by decision of the bank CEOs and the leaders in the industry, SABRIC is the home for the interbank collaboration. Our whole model is built on information and information sharing. It's been part of the journey from day one, and most certainly as the trusted third party responsible for hosting the information, we take information security very seriously, as well as confidentiality. Not only just confidentiality of our individual banks' postures, but of course the reputational risk of the industry is also a very high priority from where we sit. From day one, we've also realized that you cannot combat crime in isolation. You have to have partnerships, and I'm thrilled to see that some of our partners are actually in the room today. We consider the South African police and law enforcement in general to be probably our most important key strategic partner. We've been working with them for many moons. We've also worked with institutions like the CSIRT, and the list just carries on. And most certainly our partnerships are definitely local but also global. And in that regard, we have really worked quite hard to expand our relationships from a cybersecurity perspective over the last couple of years. So just to give you an opportunity to glance at the slide now, I know that the print is a little bit small, but if you look at our value proposition, and you're most welcome to also contact me if you need more information, you'll notice that our whole value proposition rides around the support to our members as well as the industry per se and our partners. And we don't actually investigate or have a footprint within individual banks. We operate, as I've said, at sector level or industry level, but our initiatives are there to promote individual objectives as well as group objectives. Very important, of course, is to stay relevant, and every couple of years, because of how banking changes and how crime changes, we literally have to go back to the drawing board and we have to reinvent our business. And there's been lots of talk today about technology and the drivers of how the threat actually changes, and most certainly all of that impacts our own business model as well. Just before I get on to the actual topic of the day, the logos that you see on the screen now represent our members. You will notice that there's 18 banks that are current members. So from a footprint perspective, we probably have, and please don't quote me on this, but I would say probably about 90% of the retail market in South Africa. And you'll see brands like Citibank there as well. And of course, if you are a commercial bank that is a member of the Bankers Association, you are welcome to join SABRIC on a voluntary basis. We're quite precious about the entry requirements to the business, and I think it's actually really served us well over the years. We focus on banking. You will see the logos of 3 cash and transit companies there. Just to contextualize that, is the movement of cash and crimes affecting, or cash-related crimes affect both the cash and transit industry as well as the banking industry, and that's because of the common threat. It's appropriate for us to collaborate in the fight. And then you'll also see one ATM service provider there, and that is literally a membership that was initiated because of the ATM bombing problem that South Africa was confronted with a couple of years ago. Many of you might recall seeing reports of that in the media, so they also a member of ours. Right, so moving on to the banking industry journey. I'm very fortunate. SABRIC's been around since 2002, and I literally joined the organization in 2003, beginning of 2003. So I'm very privileged that I've actually been with the organization over all of these years, and I've actually seen the maturity of the interbank collaboration, and I can assure everybody in the room that the South African banks take crime exceptionally seriously and are very serious about it. So as far back as 2005 already, we, in collaboration with the South African police, developed a strategy to address cyber crime. And that was because of where banking was going. You often hear people say that we can't catch up with the criminals. I don't see it that way. I see it the other way around. I see criminals following business practices. Criminals follow business trends. So the more banking became digitalized, the more banks started using digital means to try and get their hands on the money. And as we were anticipating the next sort of trends in banking, we already realized in those years that we needed to look at a strategy to be able to respond to cybercrime. So we didn't start with initiatives, cybersecurity initiatives. We started with the other side of the coin, and that was cybercrime initiatives. And I just mentioned 2 there. The one was, and I say this tongue in the cheek, the one was to report crime online. We wanted to work with the South African police to come up with a model where complainants could actually report crime online. And if you think about it, we're fighting digital crime, but we have to physically go into a police station to report the crime. So we were hoping to prompt some change in thinking around that particular aspect. It doesn't mean that because the political decision has been made that everything is going to be perfect and everybody's going to get together and we're all going to sing Kumbaya. It doesn't work like that. Believe you me, collaboration is hard work. It's very hard work. Some of the factors, different maturity levels of participants. We sit with this in banking. We have huge banks, and then we have new entrants in the market. Huge banks have legacy systems, their architecture, everything is different to, for example, a young bank like Time Bank that launched last year. Discovery Bank, different models. So we're sitting with different priorities. We're sitting with different, everything's basically different. The fact that they're both rendering banking services, yes, that is the common platform. But now you need to collaborate. How do you collaborate if people are at different levels of maturity? I had a huge wake-up call. We decided that we're going to pursue the sharing of information based on 16 ENISA threats. And I thought it was going to be as simple as saying, banks, here are the threats, here are the descriptors, please start sharing your information. Only to learn that different banks are monitoring different threats at different points in time. It doesn't work like that. So our journey is very much still a work in progress, and we're not going to give up. Obviously, we're going to chip away and work at these things. Also, competing priorities. Collaboration is not the highest priority within banking. Banking is the highest priority within banking. So that's something that we need to manage. Over and above that, resource constraints. I don't know what your industries look like, but I can tell you that I'm noting within the banking industry that people are having to do far more and take on far more responsibilities per resource than probably in 5 years ago. Resources are really a problem. Then something that might be particular to my environment only is the need to sell the vision continuously. As I said, our CSIRT has been operational since 2014, but the people that are responsible for making it happen are not the same people as the people that were there in 2014. So continuously you have to explain the vision, and you've got new entrants and so forth, which impacts on collaboration. Also, common infrastructure. I never anticipated that could be such a big issue. But if you think about it, it's not as simple as it seems. Share information. Let's all put our information onto this platform. It doesn't work like that. People have preferences. People have investments. Banks, have certain processes and procedures. So that was a challenge for me. And then, of course, very important to find that sweet spot. Because as soon as your collaboration focuses on something that makes the participants' life, their day job easier, immediately the collaboration takes a different, flavor. So we work quite hard to make sure that the things that we collaborate on are the things that matter to our members, and in that regard, we take our cue from the leadership, being the CISOs themselves. Top of mind issues. Of course, I think this has been said this morning as well, and I don't think this is any different in any other sector. We are very aware of the fact that it's not whether you're going to be attacked, it's when you're going to be attacked. So cybersecurity and cybercrime are top of mind issues all the time. Another top of mind issue is the magnitude of the attack surface. Hectic, absolutely hectic. And in banking, one of the big problems is that the attack surface is not under the control always of the banking industry. If you think about how many bank customers there are, if you think about how many bank staff members there are, I don't have figures with me, but I know that one of the majors has an excess of 40,000 staff members. Now, if you double that up with hardware, infrastructure, and so forth, you actually get an understanding of how big this, this attack surface is. Our colleagues at BankServe shared some figures with me quite recently, and I asked them, in 2018, tell me how many unique point-of-sale devices did you switch to in last year? And they gave me a figure of over 700,000 unique point-of-sale devices that they switched to. Huge number, because those devices are actually placed in the retail environment. I asked them to give me a figure of ATMs. They say they switched to in excess of 50,000 unique ATMs in last year. Please, that's not the figure of for ATMs in South Africa. I think some of those ATMs were cross-border ones. But I'm trying to explain to you how big this attack surface is. And every touch point is susceptible to vulnerability. And that is the challenge that the South African banks have to manage on a daily basis. Then, of course, the banks need to optimize their technology investments. And I think the realization that vendors are actually partners to some extent has long ago been made by the banking industry. So here, the vendor is not just your commercial service provider. Vendors are probably, and technology is part of the strategy, definitely. Prevention, the highest priority. Law enforcement will definitely, I'm sure, do their utmost to apprehend perpetrators, but they have to be identified first. And of course, they're not usually, within the jurisdiction, so there's all kinds of complexities. So our position is prevention is our first choice. I've already touched on collaboration, and of course, skills retention is a huge problem. I cannot tell you how many of the colleagues in the banking industry that I've worked with and had the privilege of working with since I started with SABRIC in 2003 have actually left, that are regrettably abroad. For some reason, lots of cybersecurity professionals land up in Australia. I don't know what's happening in Australia, but that it's a bit of a brain drain from banking to Australia. So that's a challenge that banks have to grapple with. And of course, banks definitely are voluntarily proactively pursuing cybersecurity resilience. There's lots of reasons for that, but we're not waiting to be told what to do. We're actually taking responsibility, and we're doing what we can and taking it very seriously. Of course, there is concern around regulation and the cost of regulation, but we hope that when the time is right, and I know that there will be opportunity, we will work with government in that regard. Just before I close, a couple of next steps when it comes to collaboration. We currently are working quite hard to build on what we have in place already, but we want to take the collaboration, our operational collaboration, to a next level. And in that regard, the focus currently is to try and bridge the gap between cyber crime combating and cybersecurity. I sincerely believe that if cybersecurity techies understood the criminal modus operandi and if they're kept informed, they will hunt and they will do such a good job. They'll be such an asset to the whole crime combating environment. And we're wanting in banking to bridge that gap. We're also wanting to improve our information sharing practices at the moment, and we're proactively pursuing automation thereof, because there's so much information. If you have to do it manually and selectively, I don't think that you're going to make much of an impact. So we're busy with some initiatives in that regard. And then something that I feel quite passionate about. Banks and businesses in general all subscribe to threat feeds, and they use those threat feeds to protect their own businesses. And I'm convinced that if we had to take those IOCs and if we had to work them, now when I say work them, I'm talking about probably a CSIRT really working with its members to see how these manifested in a particular space and time. If we were to work them, we would be able to optimize the financial investment in cybersecurity threats by turning it into intelligence for law enforcement. I sincerely believe that that is something that can be done, and we as the banking industry are definitely going to be looking into that. And then of course it works the other way around. If digital evidence that comes across the desks of investigating officers and crime intelligence, if those leads can be fed back into the banking industry, we can use that information as IOCs. So that's something that we're going to be exploring. And then in closing, just to say that our collaboration definitely is not just at operational level in the banking industry. Our collaboration is also at strategic level, and I think you'll be very pleased to hear that thought leaders within the banking industry in this space are transparent. They are sharing their ideas, they are sharing strategies, they are supporting each other. And I do believe that if we continue and if we can expand it beyond our own immediate industry, across business and even start having strategic discussions at governmental level, that we are on the right track. So that's what I'd like to share with you this morning, and I'm happy to take questions when the time comes.